lo gesher tsar miot, gesher tsar miot.
On September 11, 2001, as the towers burned in New York, all over the country, children were looking up at their parents or their teachers for guidance. College students were arguing with each other and with their professors. People went to work and hoped that the manager, the CEO, or the president of the company would have words of guidance. Everyone heard the president promising retaliation. Anthony Robbins was asleep in Hawaii when the towers were hit. That day was to be the second day of a conference on leadership that he was teaching to 2,000 participants from 40 countries, with about 100 New Yorkers, many of whom had lost family, friends, and entire businesses that morning. For a moment, Robbins considered canceling the event, but he reconsidered. When evil happens, for life to make sense, some good must come from that evil. When tragedy strikes, if life is to have meaning, some good must result from the tragedy.
As I'm sure you know by now, early this morning, our time, there was a terrorist attack in New York and in Washington, D.C., and 4 airplanes were hijacked. The airplanes were leaving for the West Coast, and they hit to the World Trade Centers and hit both towers, and they imploded and were destroyed, and probably 10 to 20,000 people probably died in the process. And there's a great deal of horror, as you can imagine, there, and people working very hard to salvage any human life that's still there in that situation. A lot of other people who witnessed the experience of horror. A lot of people in this room who probably have family members there with concerns. It's very difficult to communicate based on the phone lines. And then in Washington, D.C., the Pentagon was hit, and there's been a great destruction there. And then there was another plane that landed outside of Pennsylvania. So this is emotional mastery. And so it's an opportunity for us to figure out, how do you focus on? What do you focus on? What does this mean? What do you do? And from a leadership perspective, I think the first focus has to be who needs to be served and cared for. And so the first focus is who is directly affected by this. And there are people in this room who are directly affected by this, and I think everyone here's hearts go out to you, and our love is there for you, but more than just our love, we want to do everything we can to support you personally. So the experience that's happening right now is radically different for everyone here. Radically different. Some people are saying, what are you upset about? This stuff happens in my country every day. Maybe not as dramatically, in some cases more dramatically. Some people are angry and they want to attack somebody. Some people are going to look at the Islam culture in a very ugly way when it's not a culture that's generated this, it's not a people that's generated this, it's a few individuals that have made some choices, and they're going to be in a different point of view. There's all kinds of things to focus on. There's all kinds of meanings which will create emotions, and there's all kinds of actions. I think as leaders, our responsibility, 1 is focus on who we can help. 2 is to find an empowering meaning in anything life gives you. If you don't find an empowering meaning, then what you're really doing is indulging, especially if it doesn't affect you directly. Now, I'm not talking about somebody who lives in that community, because if it was your hometown and somebody came in and blew up a building, you start to look at it differently. But 6 million people died in Africa recently, and most people didn't give a shit. So my belief is simple. I believe 3 things. Number 1, in life, you got to see things as it is, but not worse than it is. And if you see it worse than it is, you're doing that to connect with yourself. You're doing that to connect with other people. You're doing that as a drama queen or king. But also, you don't want to not see it as it is. You don't want to pretend like nothing happened, because that's bullshit. This is a severe strike, and it certainly affects the psychology and the certainty and the caring and the emotions and the fears of people living in this nation and other nations too, who use this as a model of maybe where certainty or security may be. But you don't want to make it worse than it is. Second is, you got to see it better than it is, because if you don't see it better than it is, you're not a leader. Because if you don't see it better than it is with no compelling future, then what people do is just sit around. And the third thing is, when you see it better than it is, you got to do something to make it better. At some level, no matter how small it is, every small action helps to make something happen. And I was encouraged this morning as I walked around and talked with people to see so many people focused on wanting to do something rather than just sitting and crying or feeling sad. And you have the right to do that. But if it isn't directly affecting you, you have to ask yourself why you're doing that. You could say, because I have so much compassion, and I'll buy that for a period of time, but if it lasts 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 days, then you better do this the rest of your life, because there are plenty of people you could have that same caring for. I believe that caring needs to be reflected in action. And the way that action can happen is an empowering meaning. If I think you're indulging, I'm going to keep asking you what needs you're meeting by doing this. If you're taking action, you'll have my total support, because I think anything we can do. So one of the things we can do, a couple of things we can do. Number one is there's going to be a major need for blood. And so I'm arranging to make a blood drive here at this person's program. So we're going to arrange to have them come here and be able to take our blood for any of those who want to donate your blood. That is a real resource. That's a real contribution. And by the way, it'd be better to be in a positive state because it affects your blood. We're going to change the entire format of this day, and we're going to use this as a phenomenal tool for emotional mastery. But let's first think about the people that need our direct help instead of ourselves. That'd be the families, people here that may not even know how their families are doing. That'd be the workers that are out there right now trying to save people who are giving their heart and soul. It'd be anyone who's dealing with this crisis who needs additional strength. Send love and send light and send prayers to them in whatever way it makes sense to you. Let's do that for a moment of silence for 1 minute. Here we go.
Many people at the conference felt that the intense destruction in New York deserved an equally intense emotional response on their own part. Others felt numb and worried that their reaction wasn't intense enough. Some were secretly pleased and excited. Many had been awake and upset since 3 a.m. and now felt demoralized and emotionally exhausted. In order to restore their emotional resources, Robbins will guide the group through an intense emotional experience of gratitude, appreciation, and a possibility of a new empowering vision which all could share.
It's usually after great pain that people begin to make new choices or begin to appreciate things they've begun to take for granted, like basic freedoms. This can truly serve. It's up to us whether it does or not. You must create a vision of something greater. See it as it is, then see it better than it is. Then make it the way you now see it. That's what a leader does. They create a vision for more. Think about all the people that right now that are laughing, and if you could absorb all their laughter in your body. All over the earth, there are people laughing right now. All over this world right now, there are people kissing. Right now. All over this world, absorb all their kisses. If you're going to absorb all the pain, you better take up all of humanity's love too. Because otherwise, you're not picking a balance. Because a real leader is here to serve, not their own needs, but the greater good. And in so doing, their needs are met as well. You can't give strength to someone else unless you have it inside you. You can't give love to someone else unless you've given it to yourself. And you sure can't create an exciting life if the only time you can be excited is when there are no problems. Because if you're waiting for a time when there are no problems, and there's no pain, and there's no tragedy, and there's no injustice before you celebrate, then you're never going to celebrate again as long as you live, or you're going to have to focus only on a very small part of the world. Don't be selective in your caring. Don't be selective in your pain. Create gratitude now. From that place, there'll be more of you to give. If you look for the good, it's always there. What's wrong is always available, whether you show it on the news or not. And so is what's right. Right now, there are children being born into a world where they will be loved. Right now, there are people being saved in hospitals all across this country. Right now, there are lives being turned around by people who care. Everywhere in this moment, life is brewing and growing and expanding all over this earth. Life always moves forward. It never moves backward. Children are laughing. People are achieving. If this was just one more event in your life, another piece of the fabric coming together to create more of you, the real you showing up, what would you decide to do? How would you decide to deal with tragedy? What decision could you make? Because in a state of certainty, you know what's right, not what I know, what you know. You have to make your own choices. We can all share our point of view, but you have to make your own choices. What's right for you to do? How can you use this? What can you remember about humanity or about yourself? What emotions are available at any moment for you? What did you focus on when you first thought about this? When you first heard it? And you probably had several things. You focused on one thing and then another and then another. Is that true? And then as you focused it, what meaning did you give to that? And then, what did you decide out of that? Did you decide you have to be more careful? Did you decide you just have more faith? Did you decide to put things in balance? Did you decide to be more grateful? Did you decide to give some blood? What did you decide before we talked this morning? I want to know how you processed initially, what you focused on, what meaning you gave, what you did in your head, what action you think you do. And then we're going to do a little analysis together so we can see the diversity. We're going to have you be in groups of 7 people so you really get a different sets of perspectives.
Here, Robbins explains some frameworks for how people produce meaning, starting from the fact that a stimulus, such as that morning's news, prompts one to ask questions. All emotions are based on a triad of 3 areas of experience working together: physiology, focus, and language patterns. This triad is represented by the triangle that Robbins is now drawing on the board.
Whatever stimulates it, somebody's request, somebody's demand, somebody's interest, television, whatever. What will control your focus, though, day to day, even with that stimulus, is questions. So if when this happened, the question you asked yourself was, and your focus is like, oh my God, who did this? Then we know what's going to happen. You're going to move towards anger. If your question was, how could man do this to man? What's humanity coming to? Then you've gone to a different place. If you went to a question like, God, I wonder how these families are dealing with that, you're going to come up with a different set of emotions. If your question was, how can I really serve in this area? How can I help? You're going to go to a different place. Your questions control your focus, and your focus will control your feelings because it will move you towards a meaning. It'll move you in a direction. Day to day, moment to moment, it's your questions. What controls your focus throughout your life is your values. So if you value, for example, security as your highest value, I know this event is unnerving for you, right? If you value, let's say, making a difference, some part of you actually has maybe a sense of excitement about this because you know that these are the kinds of moments, these are defining moments in which you can truly make a difference in the world. Day to day, people don't pay attention. People pay attention when there's pain. People want help when there's pain. So it all depends on what you value.
A core concept in Robbins' thinking is that all human behavior is driven by 6 basic human needs. The first 4 are the needs of the personality and are essential to human functioning. The last 2, growth and contribution, are spiritual needs which are essential to human fulfillment. All 6 human needs can be met in negative or positive ways. For example, in a situation such as September 11, many people experienced a loss of significance and certainty, which could lead them to the emotion of anger. Anger restores the sense of significance. The angry person feels important. And certainty, the angry person knows who is to blame. Even though a destructive emotion such as anger doesn't feel good, it is difficult to abandon it when it satisfies 2 or more needs. The goal is to find more positive and sustainable ways of meeting one's needs so that one can rise above one's own personal emotional challenges and address higher quality problems that can lead to helping others. It is ultimately by serving others that all 6 human needs are met most intensely.
If you value significance more than anything else, you're pissed off about this if you're an American. Right? If you value certainty, you may be pissed off because you're afraid you're going to lose that, so you get into anger as a way of overcoming that. If you value connection, you probably are trying to think of all the people you can connect with, or you probably called people you care about the situation, or you shared it, if that's the highest thing you have. If you value variety, this is like, wow, this is drama, this is terrible, but it's a little exciting for you. Because there's no bad or good here. This is about authentically knowing how you react to situations. And you might look at somebody and be upset they're not reacting the way you're reacting, but no one's going to react exactly the way you were going to react except somebody that's your exact model of the world. And if you limit your life to people that share all your same beliefs and values and rules, you better put yourself on a tiny, small little island with very few people. To be part of humanity, you have to appreciate all these points of view and then allow them, some of them may influence you as we talk about this. Because some people are going to be in your group and they go, this is bullshit. People die every damn day. Or now because it's this dramatic way it's done, you're going to be upset. And someone else is going to go, how could you say that? My family's in New York City, right? Or someone's going to say, I don't know. I think, this is America's payback for all the shit they've done. Someone's going to go, what? We do more things for the world? So this could be a really inspiring conversation. Or if you start to get hooked, if you feel yourself getting hooked by something someone's saying, instead of getting hooked by them, you got to realize you're the one who's hooked. It has nothing to do with them. Why is this bothering you so much? What is it that you're overvaluing for you to get this upset? Because you're getting that upset, something you're probably overvaluing. You're valuing too much. You're valuing it more than the relationship or the learning of the conversation. See if you can stay fascinated by the unique different ways instead of judgment about everybody's point of view.
The group was then asked to break off into small groups of 5 to 7 people, each group including at least one American and one non-American. The purpose of these discussions was to examine the relationship between one's initial emotional reactions and one's system of meaning, as well as to observe the relationship in other participants. Confronted by the sheer diversity of emotional meanings, it became clear that each individual's particular combination of questions, values, beliefs, and needs is unique. This recognition that one's emotional reality exists only in oneself prompts a sense of ownership and responsibility for the meaning one wants to create. After the large group reconvened, Robbins called on individual participants to share their experience. You will see that these conversations follow 3 steps characteristic of human needs psychology. Robbins will seek to identify the person's most highly valued needs, desires, beliefs, and rules. To influence a person, you must know what already influences them. What is their model of the world? Next, Robbins will identify the meaning a person associates with a possibility of taking steps toward change. That is the barrier to progress. Then Robbins interrupts the old pattern of meaning or emotion and provides a new alternative that more effectively meets the needs of the individual or the group. The first man he calls on is Asad.
What's your name? Where are you from?
Asad. I'm from Berkeley, California.
Okay.
Originally from Pakistan.
Originally from Pakistan.
So, I'm a Muslim. In my group, there was actually a gentleman who had a pretty associated experience. His girlfriend was in the area when this whole thing happened. I had a very different experience. Other people had different experience. There was a gentleman who, I guess he works with Red Cross or one of those organizations. So it was very different, and it was great to get a perspective to see where everybody else is coming from. My first reaction was that I didn't give this any meaning. I just thought, let's see what happens. My fear was that me and people like me are going to be branded immediately,
So you did give it a meaning.
But it was kind of mild.
Yes. Mild. I'll be branded for life. There's a mild meaning.
No, not.
I'm not criticizing you. I totally feel for you. I just want to point out there's no such thing as not creating a meaning. But there is what you did, which is, okay, I'm starting creating a meaning. You went to a maybe mode. Let's see, which is very intelligent of you. But go ahead, continue.
Yeah. So it took a lot of courage for me. I wanted to say in the group what I thought would be the right thing to say, which is like, oh, this is really bad, and it's horrible, and people have died, and this should never happen. But I thought that, if I'm not going to step up, and like you said, emotional mastery is about being you first.
Yes, I agree.
So I thought, my first reaction was, as a Muslim, hey, this is retribution. That was a kind of a feeling. It wasn't like a judgment, like, yeah, this is great. Finally somebody, it was kind of like a feeling like of maybe camaraderie or understanding, like somebody's going to understand where Muslims are coming from when they do things like this, wherever they do it in the world. And then the second thing was, for me, it was, I wish I could be there so that, whatever. Maybe I could just hold somebody's hand, or maybe I could just, sit by somebody, or whatever level of contribution that I could give. I wish I could do that.
When you said that people would understand where Muslims are coming from, help us understand. Because I don't know if people will. I don't know if people will look at that and say, okay, now I know the pain they've been through and that's what's driving them. Why don't you give us your perspective?
Okay, it was during the Gulf War. It was about nothing except money, oil. That's all it was about. It wasn't about Saddam Hussein. It wasn't about any of that. It was about oil. That's what it was about. And in the American newspapers, I don't think anybody ever remembers reading how many people, innocent people, died in Iraq. They had this thing, we've got smart bombs, and we've got smart this, and we've got smart that. But the only people that died, most of the people that died, were civilians, children, women, old men. And a lot of people that actually went to fight, they were civilians in soldiers' clothes.
And so how that relates to you for this bombing is, because do you see the diverse reactions within him? Because he wants to be there to hold somebody's hand, but he also understands why it happens, which means he has conflicting triads within himself in terms of the experience here. How many see this? Let me see your hands. Now what he has is the courage to express what he really feels in an environment that wouldn't be very popular, which I acknowledge immensely. Explain to us though how that relates in terms of this bombing for you then. You see the injustice happen there, so it's like what comes around goes around kind of thing, or karma, or what's the relationship for you that first reaction you had?
First reaction was simply that somebody else will understand my feeling of frustration, and maybe.
What's the feeling of frustration based on? Because I doubt seriously if many people will understand that frustration because of this. I think what they'll probably do is want to retaliate just the way you fear. I doubt seriously if that event will cause people to understand.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
I think that's why there's so much violence all over the world has been perpetrated, in the Middle East, in Bosnia and all these places, is because what people do is they take the pain they have and they decide the way to get rid of it is to give it back to somebody else.
Exactly. That's exactly what I mean. That people, the whole Israel-Palestine issue, it's all about Muslims feel, hey, listen, you came into my home, took, my home, and you kicked me out, and you raped my wife and my daughter and everything, and then you give back like a little bathroom to me, and I'm supposed to celebrate, and when I'm not celebrating, you come and kick my ass. So that's what Muslims feel. On the other hand, the people who are doing all these things, they feel, hey, listen, we're powerful, we'll do whatever it takes to protect our interests. There's no right, there's no wrong. I don't feel there's a lot of the violence is being perpetrated, like I said, during the Gulf War. It was economics, it's politics. The people who die, they don't care about all of this, or maybe some of them do, but what they do care about is their mothers and their fathers and their daughters and their sons, and they don't want to die, they just want to live, they just want to be happy, just like everybody else. And I don't know, I guess, so that, yeah, I guess you're right. I have mixed emotions in the sense that I wish that somebody would stop and sometimes just think, whether I'm Muslim or whether I'm Jewish or whether I'm American or Bosnian or whatever, I want to be happy. And I want to do the things in life that make me happy. And if somebody takes that right away from me, to do the things that I want to do, then I want to retaliate. I want to do something. But I don't think people understand that. People just say, oh, these are bad guys. Let's kill them. Whether Americans do it or Muslims do it,
that's true.
It doesn't make it right.
So the challenge is keep doing the same thing that doesn't work over and over and over again. Retaliate, the other side doesn't understand, they retaliate back. The other side doesn't understand, they retaliate back. And so we have all this violence. And the violence is because of one thing. Because when people are hurt, one way to get out of pain is to get angry. Because when you get angry, you get certain and you feel significant. Because when someone takes things, you feel insignificant and you feel uncertain. And so anger is the way to return to that. But anger runs its course till it starts to eat you up, and then people start to feel sad. So I don't have an answer for you on a humanity basis. I can only tell you the answer on an individual basis. That if you continue with the anger you've got, you won't be able to do this. And you're far advanced because you have the ability to have both emotions. And I respect you immensely and share them. I respect you immensely first for being willing to tell us the truth of what you feel and to show it to us. I respect you immensely because you also have the ability to have compassion, because many people could not get beyond their anger and say, I'd like to be there and hold somebody's hand. They just go, hey, they deserve it. I don't know them anyway, they're faceless. So your evolution as a soul, as a spirit, is quite accelerated compared to most people. But then the reason you're here, my guess is, like why we're all here, there's a spiritual reason we're all here together. We're here for a reason. This is not a mistake. And one woman was telling me she's feeling guilty. She's so guilty because she should be back home to help other people. And I'm going to bring a group of people up here so you can watch the interaction. And she's here because she's got that guilt all the time. The woman who's angry is angry all the time. This is just a new reason. These are patterns. All this event is an opportunity for you to run the triads you already run with more intensity. So he gets to run the triads he's had of frustration for some time. She gets to run her anger. Somebody else runs their guilt. Somebody else runs their sadness. It's a magnifier, a massive magnifier, but people go where they live. And if you want to change the world, you got to change yourself and then your friends, and you got to go back and do what nobody else will do. I have not had your experience. I have not had my family raped, by someone who stole my home and took it from me. I've had pains that I thought were intense, but I'm sure not as intense as the pains you've experienced or your family's experienced. So I have zero judgment.
Robbins had been informed of Asad's background and knew that he came from a family where no one had been raped or displaced. He knew that Asad was speaking metaphorically and had taken a position as a representative of the Muslims in the room and in the world. Robbins has accepted Asad's position as a metaphor for one of the extreme polarities represented in the large audience. Even more, he addresses Asad as if he truly were in a position of leadership in his community.
I have respect for you, for being able to share what you have, and my only invitation to you, since I know you want one or you wouldn't have stood up, is to say, if you continue to make it okay to retaliate, even in your head, then you contribute to the problem of what was done to you. And so you got to somehow find a way, in my opinion. It's just my opinion. If you want to tell me I'm full of shit, I'm totally okay with that because I'm not you. But in my opinion, if you allow that space in your head, which you have every right to have, then you're not Nelson Mandela. And people say, I can't do that. That's horseshit. Every person's a Nelson Mandela. Everybody's got it in them. Whether they choose to or not has to do with, are you selfish or are you focused on the greater good? So for you, I don't have an easy answer. But I'm curious, do you think, and you have every right to do it, if you keep that awareness, that feeling of now they understand, do you think they really understand? That's my first question. No. Then how can you as one individual make a difference if you still understand yourself, if it's still a little bit okay inside of you because you understand? Or do you have to extract that out and go to the next level like Mandela did, which Mandela doesn't have 1 ounce of it's okay for that violence in him. He doesn't 1 ounce of it. That's why he led a nation that couldn't be led, supposedly, and has integrated people that couldn't be integrated, and taken people who've been killed and abused and got them not to use violence. That's a unique individual, but you can't take somebody else to a place you've not been. Leaders have to go there first, and if you really live there, you can take anybody there. If you don't live there, forget taking somebody there. So either you're part of the problem or you're part of the solution.
How do you do it?
The question I have is, and I'm not positive how because I'm not you, the question would be, could I get myself to a place where I realize that I'm actually killing my own brethren if I make it okay for them to, even though they're justified, to feel enough justification to induce violence on others, because then what I do is I am part of reinforcing the cycle that has destroyed my community in the first place.
We see Asad experiencing a significant change as he perceives that the beliefs that serve as the basis for his wish for retribution are unrealistic. Retaliation doesn't lead to the understanding he desires, but only to further blind retaliation as well as further pain for the people he cares for. So the question becomes, having rapidly changed his intellectual belief, how does he now extinguish his emotional pattern that condones violence? This will develop into the primary question Asad will need to ask himself later in the day. Robbins has decided that Asad will be a primary focus of intervention, not only because he is interested in changing Asad as an individual, but because by changing Asad, he will influence everyone in the room in the direction of leadership. Now Robbins will examine the belief in violence that Asad will have to discard. He will present Asad with an elevated view of himself, even equating him with Nelson Mandela, and so will influence him to live up to that expectation.
What would happen if violence disappeared with all these young people? What would they do? Violence is a way for you to immediately have a mission in life, a purpose that's greater than yourself. It's heady. It gives you certainty to get in violence. It gives you significance. It's got variety, man. You never know what's going to happen next. Bomb's going off. What's going to happen? What's going to go? It makes you feel alive. It gives you a sense of contribution to something larger. You feel a connection with the people that you're involved with us in. I guarantee you the people who are on that mission probably met all 6 of their needs in that mission. I guarantee you they felt a sense of contribution on a massive scale beyond themselves. They felt like they were growing to make this demand on themselves. They felt unbelievable certainty that they were doing the right thing, that they were finally making the payback happen, that justice was finally going to be there. I guarantee you they made all 6 of their needs. Somebody who murders and somebody who sacrifices their own life to save another human being does it for the same reasons. Same needs, just different beliefs about how to make it happen. So those needs that were taken from people are not being taken from you now because you're in this room. So if you live there, you got a problem. If you let your friends live there, you're part of the problem. In my opinion, everybody's pain is real to them. And no one will ever understand somebody else's pain, but everybody understands their own. That's the challenge. Everybody's is. And there's not a person in this world who's not going to experience a ton of it in their lifetime. The only question is, what are we going to do with it? That's going to be the question. So I don't know the answer. I'm not the guy who's wise about this. You are. But I love that you're willing to ask the question. Because if you ask the question, I know you'll come up with the right answer. Because you're seeking.
My name is Burnie. I am a human being. I am a Jew. I am an Orthodox Jew. I am a second-generation Holocaust survivor. I am a property owner in Israel, in Jerusalem. I have close friends and family who live in Judea and Samaria, otherwise referred to as the West Bank. And when I heard the news this morning, one of my first reactions was precisely the same as my brother Asad expressed earlier, with precisely the same language. Now they'll understand. And I probably have the same physiology, probably the same language, the same focus. Although I don't work in the World Trade Center, frequently take the E-train into the Chambers Street, which goes under the World Trade Center, that massive shopping mall and train, which at exactly 10 to 9, just last week, I was running for a meeting, running late, and the probability of being in that event was certainly higher. Listening to Asad and listening to the others, it suddenly occurred to me, it brings together people who took the same event and we gave it totally opposite meanings. One of the thoughts I had was that this same event that I am interpreting as this very horrible destruction, there are people in the world today, right this moment, who are celebrating at their success of pulling off an amazing logistical nightmare. And Dr., I forgot his name, I would like to invite you and take out the opportunity we have of being here together at Life Mastery to sit down with you and share with you certainly my perspective and my beliefs and my belief structures, because I can probably have to admit that I was raised to hate Arabs. I mean, in my growing up, but I can tell you that neither I nor anybody I know who is more directly affected was ever raised with the concept that of goal of being a suicide bomber. And I want to draw a distinction, and again, I invite you, obviously, because I know that you will see this from a different perspective, would like to invite you to have a dialogue, although it may not affect the rest of the world. But if we can discuss this as human beings in this context, then it demonstrates that there is hope for greater hotheads to even change their perspective. Yeah.
Very nice. So interestingly enough, he would likely have been in the World Trade Center, and he's here. He didn't know why he was here. He could have made a decision so much more easily and gone locally and not had to go through all that stress, but something guided him to be here, just like everybody else. So it's your opportunity to figure out why you're here.
Let's consider Robin's options at this point. Robbins could have organized a roundtable-style discussion with a subgroup of the audience, such as Burnie, Asad, Dr. Bashar, or another New Yorker. He could have chosen to work with one or more of these people separately and individually, or he could have organized a negotiation or a debate between them. Instead, Robbins chose to do something quite different, to set up an indirect negotiation between two men who represented polar opposites. Asad, as he attempted to explain the belief in violence as a response to the suffering of his people, represented one extreme. Robbins could have chosen any New Yorker as Assad's counterpart, but he preferred to choose Burnie, a New York Jew with roots in Israel and a child of the Holocaust, as someone who, like Asad, also represented the suffering of past generations. He invited Burnie and Asad on stage to participate in a process of indirect negotiation. The purpose of indirect negotiation is to create a platform of mutual empathy between two people with opposing interests in order to prepare them for a productive interaction. The process consists of 7 steps. Step 1, introduce a metaframe. 2, clarify individual questions. 3, block direct communication. 4, internal individual negotiation. 5, listening and taking notes. 6, indirect agreement. 7, direct agreement. In this instance, Robbins chose to create a metaframe based on a sequence of Jungian archetypes.
Whenever you have a severe challenge of some sort and you're having difficulty resolving it, remember, you're not going to resolve it with the same resources that you're trying to solve it with, because what you're doing isn't working. There's something you're struggling with, like an injustice, or you don't know what to do, or you're frustrated, or you're hurt, or you're sad. One way to do this is to tap into other parts of you. Now, in social psychology, or in various forms of psychology, throughout the world, people develop different stories, mythology, to help us be able, through stories, to learn how to deal with situations just like we're dealing with today. The problems we have of life and death, of betrayal, of coupling, of connecting, of the challenges that we go through with our children, all the challenges, aging. Mythologically, the reason that something becomes a myth, a story is a myth, is it's told so many times that the story is sustained for hundreds or thousands of years, hundreds or thousands. And so they're sustained because they have lessons within them. And in this mythology, there are archetypes. And depending upon which way you look at it, the archetypes usually show up in certain types. So we're going to use 4 archetypes that are built within you, that are resources within you, meaning all of us here. So the first archetype or part of you that we're going to talk about within you, the fundamental one that most people will go for, especially in times of this situation, is the warrior. Now, the warrior is a part of you that, think of the part of you that is probably the most intense, the most strong in its attack on anything. The warrior is about action and strength. The warrior is looking to do something, and they're doing something using their power. Okay? So there's a warrior part of you. There is a part of you that many of you would think of as a magician. Think of a magician as somebody who can detach from anything and just observe it. And a magician finds the magic in anything. A magician can snap their fingers and change something. They see things that other people get upset about as absurd because they have a totally different perspective. A magician just sees that it's all magic. It's all hocus pocus. It's all spells. It's all trances. It's all hypnosis. The magician has a little bit of a whimsical view of things. The magician, as I've jotted him down here for, is that he's more involved in the invisible, he's more involved in intuition, and he knows it's easy. He knows it can be done in an instant. Whereas the warrior, how does a warrior handle it? Warrior's got to do it through strength and power and action. The magician might do it with a snap of a finger. The magician might do it by an insight or by the humor. Totally different view. Third one for you is the lover inside you. The lover, hopefully you don't need much description of, but the lover is really your deepest emotions of connection and love. This is where you vibrate with life. This is where all the deepest connections within you are. This is your connection to everything, to God, to yourself, to other people, the deepest love you have. A love that does not have conditions. A love that is pure, the purest part of you, the most loving, pure part of you. And then finally, the fourth part is the sovereign. And the sovereign, in mythological terms, is the person who really, he knows your vision and purpose, he or she. The sovereign is the one who governs, has the ability at least to govern our lives. They know why you're here, they know what you're here to do. Think of them as like being a great king or queen who has just an enormous amount of wisdom and knowledge. They've been here before and they can command. And they don't overreact. They know, a wise sovereign. Now, all four of these parts are inside of everybody in this room, every single person here. However, they're not only in every part of us, but they're not always in balance. Sometimes who's running the whole show is the warrior. And so everything is reacted to with that kind of response. Sometimes who's always in charge is the lover. And if anyone is always in charge, it gets exhausted.
It is important to understand two distinctions between the strategic archetype process and most other therapies that use archetypes. Robbins' archetypes work primarily as a sequence, which is more than the sum of the individual archetypes. Also, the strategic archetype process is solution-oriented, as it is used to seek answers to a specific question that will lead to specific decisions and behaviors. The strategic archetype process is rooted in physiology, as the participants identify parts of their body that are associated with each archetype. The strategy of indirect negotiation harnesses the force of emotion, turning it into a strength that will bring about unity. Indirect negotiation operates on two levels, internally and interpersonally. Internally, the process begins with a second step of clarifying individual questions. The force that would have been directed towards an opponent is thereby directed inwards towards the clarification of one's own values and emotional states. In other words, the negotiation must begin on the inside before it can be directed outwards. Each man will redefine his problem as a primary question to be answered within his own self during the internal negotiation.
And let's turn your chairs facing each other. So what's the question that you want to resolve? Red microphone.
There are so many things flooding, but I guess the primary question that I want to ask Asad is...
No, it's the question I want you to ask yourself.
This is a question I'm asking myself.
Yes, because here's what happens. As long as he wants to get Assad's answer, there's going to be some vested elements no matter how pure this man is, and he's a very pure man. All you're going to do is you're going to capture as fast as you can. He's going to say, my lover, or we'll start out with my warrior probably. My warrior says, that's the phrase you're going to say in the answer to the question. You're going to write down what he says. It'll be hard because if he's doing it well, he'll go fast. You're going to have to write as fast as you can, and hopefully you can read your writing afterwards. I'm getting you to this because I can't. I got symbols. Okay, so what's the question first? What's the thing you're struggling with that you'd like to resolve? That if you could resolve it, it creates pain for you, or anger for you, or frustration for you, or it's overwhelming for you, and you want to resolve it.
The question I want to answer myself in the context of today is this.
Anything you want, but I'd like to see it relating in the context.
The question that I struggle with all the time is, what is the answer to the situation?
Okay, what is the answer to what situation specifically?
The escalating cycle of violence on both sides. How do we find a peaceful resolution that does not involve that allows both of us to live in our homelands?
Great. How do we find a peaceful solution that allows both of us to live in our homelands? Okay, that's a question that he can begin to pursue and answer it. Okay. Now that's a large question because it involves things he can't necessarily what? Control. So now you brought up a great question, and you can pursue the answer to that question within yourself first, and then you can pursue it later on with Asad, right, on your own. But what I now want you to do is convert that question as to why it's important to you. What's the real question behind that question? There's a real question relating to you behind that question. So what do you got to solve in you? What is it you need to resolve?
Resolving what my true feelings are. I mean, when I said, I sort of regret what I said earlier about, I was raised in hate, because I'm not sure it was raised, but I'm trying to resolve, what is it exactly that I feel, because I also, when I look at it as a group of people, okay, is resolving the group of, the label we give to the Arabs versus an individual, okay?
Right.
And I think it was similar to what Asad expressed, the conflict of, I don't wish any individual harm.
You have all kinds of things that are going on now simultaneously. So let's just come down to one thing. What do I need to do? I'll give you a question if I may for simplicity's sake. What do I need to believe, understand, or do now to take the situation and use it to make me a better person and somehow serve others that I care about as well? And make the sounds of your warrior. Do it again. Do it again. Great. And then just say, my warrior says, and you say whatever pops in your mind, and don't filter it mentally, and keep that energy, keep feeling that energy. And I'd like to have you stand, because I think you'd be standing in a warrior state. Stand in that state. And just tell you, my warrior says, my warrior says, my warrior says. Go.
My warrior says, wait, but no, my warrior, I'm not.
Stay with your warrior. Watch what he's doing. He's coming up here. Get the hell out of here. Come in here to your warrior. Make the sound again. Make the sound again. Again. Stay here. What does your warrior say? That's the way to make yourself better today, now, in a way that'll make you better and long-term serve both Arabs and Israelis. Warrior says what?
My warrior says, let's sit down.
Stay there.
Yeah, I can't. It's my warrior is overpowered, I guess, by that can't come with any positive side of the warrior, if you're asking.
He can't come to a positive side of his warrior.
I can't. If you're asking for a positive, how I will use that.
That's right. I'm asking the warrior, not the dead warrior who's going to die because all he does is fight like stupid ass. A warrior who has a purpose beyond fighting, a warrior who's really trying to serve a higher good. Not an asshole that was conditioned from youth. Not someone who lives in pain. A real warrior. Not a thug who calls himself a warrior so he can feel better about himself. A thug is out just to create violence because they felt violence themselves at one time or someone they cared about. That's a thug. A warrior has a higher purpose.
In talking to Burnie, Robbins is talking to Asad. This is an indirect way of addressing Asad without engaging his sensitivity to domination. Robbins is also deliberately intense on Burnie in order to leave the option open of being hard on Asad.
The warrior to sit down with the other warrior and from a position of from strength as warriors to talk, to actually do the planning side of what a warrior does.
To change our focus, we must become someone we are not. At this moment, Robbins has positioned both Asad and Burnie to become another. The archetypes are imaginary entities that are used to bring out an alternative identity in each man. The process of internal negotiation begins for Burnie as he struggles to find his warrior. Asad's attention is intensely focused on Burnie as he must take notes of everything that Burnie says and so incorporates Burnie into himself.
Is recognize how this experience can make you a better person, how you can share this with others, take the message to the world and make the message global.
That's right.
The warrior says, tell Tony to distribute the videotapes, the live video feed from these events, to make that message global.
So Burnie, now I want your magician. Where's your magician? Okay, good. All right, have your hands up there. Okay, the magician. And I'll hold this for you, okay, because I want you to stay with it. Make the magician sounds.
Puff.
Make the magician at his best.
Puff.
That's it. Now keep on hanging on the magician now. Remember, the magician comes to a place of the humor of it. The magician sees the simplicity. The magician is not caught up like the warrior even slightly. The magician has a completely different perspective on this. The magician knows how to snap their fingers and create a change instead of having to fight forever to make it happen. The magician has magic available, and the magician is kind of playful. I'll turn you this way, Asad, so you can see him too. Up here, it's hard to hear. Go ahead.
The magician says, just, hey, why don't we just, play volleyball? The magician says, hey, let's go sailing. The magician says, let's take a clean map with nothing but latitude and longitude, with just the water, and let's just create the map the way we lay out this room. The magician says, wouldn't it be nice if, and what if we could, and perhaps we can.
By the way, these phrases the magician's offering interrupt the entire pattern and create something possible.
The magician says, let's just have fun.
That's great. The magician
says we can be happy. The magician says we don't even need land to be happy. The magician says, just be happy. The magician says there's plenty of room on the planet.
Magician says to me.
Magician says to me, bring your kid up differently.
Robbins is moved to tears when Burnie's magician tells him to raise his child without the sense of us versus them. Burnie's child, by the way, is still a month from being born. Burnie's commitment in relation to his unborn child is a commitment of the highest level and shows that he is taking full responsibility for the meanings he creates. He does so without even needing the discussion he wanted with Asad. His conviction comes from within, and he doesn't need to get it from anyone else.
How's that for an answer? That's where the problem is. And that's where the answer is. That's it. The magician is so wise. All right. Give us your lover. Where's your lover? The question for the lover is, what do I, Burnie, need to do today to take this event and make it the most powerful transformation of my whole life? Have me become better today because of this than I've ever been, and as a result, long-term serve all of humanity.
My lover says, can't we all just get along?
Very good. That's good. My lover says. You see the state change here? My lover says.
My lover says, love is more important than war. My lover says, Burnie, go home and give your wife a hug.
My lover says, Burnie.
My lover says, Burnie, Dove, my Hebrew name.
My lover says, Burnie.
My lover says,
Burnie.
Burnie, hug your friends, hug your family. My mother says, tell your mother again that you love her.
Yes. What does your lover say about Asad?
My lover says Asad has, I'm sure, pretty much the same feelings. My lover says Asad has the same kind of lover, the same kind of, is being driven by the same passions. His feelings.
As the lover, Burnie quickly moves to the deepest level of loving and feeling loved. He refers to himself by his Hebrew name, Dov, which carries strong family affection. And he slips at one point from saying, my lover says, to my mother says. At the point at which Burnie is contemplating his love for his mother, Robbins asks Burnie to say something about Asad. In the midst of feeling so loving and loved, Burnie answers that he sees Asad as having the same lover, the same passion, as being fully equivalent. When Burnie identifies with the extreme imaginary entity of his lover, he realizes that Asad must experience the same emotional processes.
Where's your sovereign? There we go. Make the sounds of your sovereign the king, the wise king, who knows what you're made for, who knows the road ahead.
I understand.
Good. Tell us, the king says to Burnie.
The sovereign says, speak only after great thought. The sovereign says, choose your emotions with care. The sovereign says, choose your expressions.
As the sovereign, Burnie recognizes that not only we can choose our words and our thoughts, but also our emotions.
What's the question, Asad, that you want to resolve within yourself, or the conflict that you want to resolve within yourself? You said you came here with enormous frustration.
I guess I'm wondering what is it that I feel that they're taking from me
Okay.
that is making my life less?
Okay. So what if we made the question, what is it that I've been focusing on that makes me believe someone is making me less? And what could I do today to no longer ever feel less again? Because that would resolve it then.
Yes.
Okay, does that work for you?
Yes.
Okay, great. I want you to stand up. And what I want you to do is, let's start with your warrior. Where's your warrior? From that place. Make the sounds of your warrior. Do it again. Do it again. Now, from your warrior, tell me the answer to this question. What is it that you believe they have been taking from you that makes you feel less? And what can you do today so that you no longer have to live in reaction and can become free forever?
The warrior says, let's fight together.
Who is he speaking of? The warrior says, who's to fight together?
All of us, everyone.
The warrior says, let's fight together in order to what?
In order to do something new, to feel something new, to experience something different.
And the warrior says we should fight together for what?
For freedom.
Of whom?
Of our captured hearts and minds.
Have the word tell us how. How do we fight together for our captured hearts and minds? Warrior says.
The warrior says, put your swords down, take off your armor, and walk to the other side, and look into the eyes of the person you're fighting. And then give him a hug.
Ask the warrior, how can a warrior do that? Ask the warrior, how can a warrior do that when they know so much pain has been induced? So much hurt. How can one walk to this side, look in the eyes, and hug? The warrior knows. Ask the warrior.
The warrior says, show your cuts and bruises to your enemy and tell them to give you a Band-Aid.
Asad's answers as the warrior are greatly accelerated by Burnie's process that Asad has assimilated in a profound way. The fighting has become communal. We fight together in the same way we play volleyball together, and the opponents are not other people but our own limiting beliefs. Asad's metaphors of disarming himself and of opening up physically and emotionally to his enemy attest to the empathy he has gained in relation to Burnie. Now, not only he is sympathetic to the other's situation, he even demands empathy by asking for a Band-Aid. As each man witnesses the other's struggle to identify with each archetype, both can't help but to realize that they are equals and part of the same emotional universe. Warrior to warrior, Burnie and Asad are beginning to reach indirect agreement. They are both warriors who do not want war.
The warrior says.
The warrior says, stop fighting and start healing.
The warrior says.
I'm tired.
That's right. I'm tired. The warrior says.
The warrior says, I want to chill and have some olives.
Let's chill and have some olives. The warrior says.
Warrior says, let's go climb some mountains and let's go cut some trees and let's go raft some rivers and swim some oceans.
Yes, those are things warriors are made to do, but they don't have much time for when all they do is fight. Warriors are people of action, people of courage. All those things are active use of the warrior in a courageous way that causes the warrior to face fear and to triumph. The purpose of the warrior is to find within you a greater level of inner strength, not to fight with others. This warrior clearly knows that. This is a mature warrior, not a dumb kid. A mature warrior understands that. The purpose of a warrior is to break through fear, which is the whole reason for war is fear. A true warrior breaks through fear. They do it by training themselves in other ways other than war. The warrior says, Asad.
The warrior says, Asad, your demon is tired, so you can chill.
Your demon's tired, so let's chill. Nice. The warrior says, Asad.
The warrior says, Asad, make love.
Ask your warrior what he values most now, because he's matured, obviously. What does he value most now? The warrior says, I value.
The warrior says, I value inner power.
Inner power. The warrior says, I value.
Joy.
Very nice.
Passion.
Passion.
Love. Desire. Courage.
Let's go to your magician. Okay? And make the sounds of your magician. Okay, make the sounds of your magician again. And we ask your magician, what is it that I've been focusing on so much that it makes me feel like they're taking it from me and therefore I'm less? And what can I focus on, believe, or understand forever now, or do that'll free me from this so I will never again feel less than, nor will I have to force someone to know that I am more than? The magician says.
The magician says,
Remember the magician? See it in the blink of an eye. The magician is that part that sees the humor in it. The magician is a little impish, fun. The magician can make a change in a second that someone else has to fight for.
magician says, you're not having fun. Magician says, you're not in love. Magician says, find the passion.
And the passion.
Magician says, smell the flowers. Eat some olives. And volleyball is cool too.
Volleyball is cool too.
Magician says, go plant some flowers, fall in love, make love, and go eat some olives.
The magician says, Asad.
Magician says, Asad, just be a kid again. It's okay. It's cool.
Let's go to your lover.
Yeah, baby.
The lover says,
It's about time.
the lover says,
The lover says, it's okay to fight. Just fight with love.
Very nice, very nice. What does the lover mean?
The lover means whenever you're out there, fighting the demons of your own limitations, do it with spirit, and do it with heart, and do it with love.
The lover says.
The lover says, eat some olives.
They must be peace food. The lover says.
The lover says, listen to the ocean. Hear the peaceful melody of the waves. The lover says, walk on the sand. Let the sunshine soak into your heart and your soul. The lover says, hold hands. The lover says, look into your own eyes and find the love that's always been there. The lover says, let the flower in every cell of your body bloom. Lover says, volleyball is good. Lover says, let's play. And then
Let's play what?
let's play and then make love.
The lover says, Asad.
Lover says, Asad. Just smile.
Just smile. The lover says, Asad.
The lover says, Asad, there is a brother and a sister on the other side, and a mother and a father, and a son and a daughter. And it's all here in your heart too. So if you kill, you're killing a part of yourself.
Where is your sovereign?
The sovereign says, if you're having fun, and if you're making love and having olives and playing volleyball, then there are no problems. Sovereign says, it's time to put down the weapons and sing.
The sovereign says. What's the hesitancy when you tell me what the sovereign says?
It's too big.
What's too big? The sovereign's too big?
It's too big for me.
You're not big enough to be a king. Ask the magician what he thinks of that.
Magician's laughing.
Ask the magician if this is you or not, if the sovereign is also you.
It is if I have the courage.
Ask your lover if you have the courage.
Yeah, baby.
Ask your warrior if you have the courage.
It's time for a new kind of courage.
Oh. It's time for a new kind of courage. Ask the three of them to take you personally and introduce you to the sovereign. Because there is something you may not have considered, that the sovereign is really God in you, as you, guiding you, is you. If that's not too big. What's the magician saying right now while he's watching all this?
Magician's looking at his watch and saying it's about time.
What's the lover saying right now?
He's saying, the sooner you do it, the sooner we'll fall in love.
What's the warrior saying?
Let's go have some fun.
Go to the sovereign. Go to your sovereign. Is it you? Tell you what, make him a prince. Don't make him a king.
Okay.
That you can do.
Yes.
Okay, make him a prince.
All right.
The sovereign says, Asad, never forget. Always remember.
Never forget.
Always remember.
Always remember. There is a mother and a sister and a father and a son and a daughter. And they feel the same kind of love and the same kind of pain as your own mother, as your own sisters, as your own father. And you're all family anyway.
Some say love, it is a river that drowns the tender reed. Some say love, it is a razor that leaves your soul to bleed. Some say love, it is a hunger that is aching need. When the night has been too long.
As each of these two men worked through the emotional archetypes in the presence of each other, They developed a powerful natural empathy for each other. They recognized that they both had the same love and the same